Hi, everyone. My name is Jan Hurd, and I want to thank you for joining us today. We are going to embark on another one of our DE&I speaker series, and I'm really glad that you are all here. As a part of our DE&I initiative, we are actually here to celebrate our partners and share, more importantly, you as a business. So as we get started, I want to talk a little bit about our vision and why we embarked on this actual initiative. We have a few program drivers that we feel are very important for you as a part of our actual community. We have a vision. We want to create a diverse and inclusive indirect technology partner community. And part of that is we want to be loud about our actual mission statement, and that is to develop a program to support people of technology-led indirect channel communities to engage, enable, and empower our partners to grow and prosper in this technology market. When it comes to the goals of this particular community for our initiative, we want to leverage Comcast investments, the brand that Comcast has grown, and to recruit and develop our partners. We like to work alongside our business owners. Importantly, lead the technology industry to diversify the partner community and improve the Comcast brand. As we grow through this actual program design, there were a few things that were really important. We wanted to have different types of resources that would be available for our partners to take advantage of, whether it was MDF funding, ambassadors, a concierge to help them through their journey. These are all things that are available at your fingertips. We partner that along with external resources. This is led by industry training, leadership development, social media development, business coaching, and productivity training. So through this particular program, we've also invested in a speaker series. So today, I'm excited to present Sean Ilenrey. Let me tell you a little bit about Sean. Sean was once a homeless high school dropout. He's transformed himself into an award-winning executive and tech keynote speaker, which is why we invited him today. As a part of this particular program, he's also sharing a little bit of tidbits from his book that he actually has written, and he's a best-selling author. So through his personal journey, it's inspired him to empower other professionals to define their own success. And Sean is also an expert when it comes to guiding professionals to curate their professional brands, achieve growth, and build purpose-filled careers. With over 20 years of experience in the customer experience industry, Sean's background spans over retail and technical support. He successfully has built and managed departments both domestically and internationally, including Latin America and the Philippines. Notably, he was entrusted with overseeing the profitable accounts that generated revenues exceeding well over $250 million annually. Sean's impressive track record extends to Fortune 500 companies as well. This is where he's actually worked up to an executive level. As of now, he actually holds an esteemed position as vice president with a company called DE&I. As a part of this particular position, he actually serves as a part of his commitment to excellence and a dedication to actually helping others define their path and exemplify his remarkable journey. Today, we actually have the privilege to delve a little bit deeper into Sean's insights, and he shares his professional guidance inspired by his second book, You Don't Owe Happiness. Everyone, let's please extend a warm welcome to Sean Ilenrey.
Wow, thank you so much. It means a lot. It's going to be hard for me to actually present after that introduction, but I'm excited. One of my biggest things I love to do is essentially support leaders and talk to leaders across organizations and professionals and business owners. I think We all have the challenge of how do we become our best selves while helping others, especially our customers. So I'm excited to present to you today. So, a couple of housekeeping. The one ask I'm going to have for you today is a little bit of participation. So, if you have access to the chat, I would love for you to be engaged with that today because we're going to have a little bit of fun. And I would love to learn a little bit about you as well. So, to confirm, just to make sure everyone can see my screen. We're good. Perfect. So, the first question I would love to ask the team before we kind of get into my entire story is who on the call today is an aspiring leader? So, if you're an aspiring leader in the chat, just say me and I'll see who you are. Got Brandy. There we go. Latricia, Jan. Okay, we have a couple. Now, who here today is a new leader? You've been a leader for, let's say, your first year in leadership, maybe 1 to 2 years. If that's you, say me. All right. If you've been a leader for, say, 2 years or more, say that's me. All right, Maureen, Milan, Quesmet. So we have a few. So as you can see, we have a wide range of leaders. And what I want to tell you guys today is if you are a leader, I want the first thing you to understand be you absolutely do not owe happiness. And I know that's contrary to what we believe because in our minds, we believe that if my team's not happy, I'm not doing my job. So the next question I want to ask in the chat, real simple. If you had to have it make a choice, you had no choice, you have to make a choice. Which concert would you go to? A Taylor Swift concert or Beyonce concert? So in the chat, let me know which one.
Why is that wrong?
Okay, we have three Beyoncés. You can't pick both. Lee. There's a lot of Beyoncés here.
How did I get on this?
So as you can see, we have a lot of Beyoncés, but the reality of it is there's certain folks who are like, no, I'd rather go to a Taylor Swift concert. And in that moment, if you as a leader have to essentially provide two options to your team, it doesn't mean you're going to make everybody happy. Someone's going to have to be unhappy in that scenario. So I say that to say it's okay to not focus on that. So before we get into the exactly what is you don't owe happiness mean, let's talk about a little bit of my journey. So for me, as it was mentioned, coming out of high school, I messed up. My ninth grade year, I passed literally one class that year, and that class was chorus. I even failed theater, which is crazy. But I was going through a transition in life of depression, of hunger, of stress, where I was just lost as a youth. I found myself in a position where I wasn't living up to expectations. And I was that kid who my teacher said had high potential. I tested really well, so I could absorb information really fast, process it, and do well on tests. But that ninth grade year, I just wasn't myself. I was off. I relocated a lot, and I just didn't feel as if I had a home base. The rest of my high school years, I actually found myself catching up. So I did very well my next 3 years, but I was still pretty far behind from the hole I dug myself in. So I get to a point where now I'm having to go to high school for an extra year. And I have a counselor sit me down and she says, well, Sean, do you know you can go straight to college right now? You're a bright kid. Why don't you just do that instead of trying to catch up on credits? And I said, well, how is that possible? And she said, well, if you go get your GED right now, you can then go ahead and join a smaller college and immediately go to school. And I said, well, why didn't anyone tell me that 3 years ago? All the stress that I've been through. So at that moment, I left school and I made a commitment and I said, I'm going to get my GED and immediately go to college. What did I do as an 18-year-old? I did neither one. What ended up happening was I tried to find work and it was very difficult. And I went back home to live with my mother for a little bit, and she was going through a challenge because she had a health issue. She was battling kidney failure, and she was at a point where she just couldn't do her career anymore, which means that she fell behind on the mortgage and payments started, slowing down. And we got to a place where she was able to sell it prior to foreclosure. And at that moment, she sold it, but she had nowhere to go. She didn't make much money off the home. I had nowhere to go. So I had a best friend of mine who was a couple cities over where she went to go live in their mother's attic. And I was essentially living in my car. Everything I owned was in the trunk of that car. And I would drive around town finding places to sleep and take care of myself. I had friends who would allow me to sleep on their floors or spend the night on their couch, but I never wanted to tell them it was permanent. My ego was in the way. I was embarrassed. So a lot of people didn't know what I was going through. And I found myself in a position where I had to work to get myself back on my feet. You fast forward less than 10 years later, I'm a vice president at a local company in Atlanta. And that doesn't make sense when you break it down. You're thinking to yourself, how were you able to grow in that way? And what ended up happening with me is that I just learned some valuable career lessons. For one, I did go back and finish up school, and I started to get into the workforce and just slowly working my way up. And I realized that if I could find a way to be an asset to any organization, that would help me grow. And on that journey, I learned that there are three key things that if I did right, I'd be successful. And number three was storytelling. Being a millennial, I'm an old millennial, but being a millennial, a lot of my peers I noticed coming out of school, they would start one job and then hop to the next one, and start one job and hop to the next one. And they weren't really building a story with their career. And I remember my mom telling me, she said, okay, if you're not going to go to college, you need to start work right away because you want to make sure you have just as many years of experience as they have schooling. So I said, okay, I'm going to make sure I prioritize that. So I understood that if I leave one job, I need to make sure I can tie those two together. So let's say I want to get into the tech field, but I'm working in banking. Instead of me just walking away from the finance fields completely, I may go to a fintech organization because now my experience carries over with me. So what I was doing as a bank teller will still work in this new environment. The second thing I did was I understood the power of study ethic. And I remember growing up, we all had someone who told us, work hard. It's all about your work ethic. And in this day and age, it's really more about study ethic. The gaps that I had, the insecurities I had, being insecure about my ability to be a leader, about my lack of education, my being a young leader, my being a leader of color, I had to understand that in order for me to curb my insecurities, I had to study as much as possible. So there was a point in time when I got my first director position. Every single morning when I woke up, I only listened to things that would feed me. Because we all know as leaders, once we get to work, we're feeding everyone else all day. So as soon as I wake up, while I'm in the shower, while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm listening to an audiobook, a podcast, a fireside chat, an interview with my virtual mentors that I had created for myself because I wanted to become a great leader, a better leader than what I knew. So it was just constantly studying. And when I would face a roadblock at work, I would figure it out. So even though I didn't go the regular educational route, I found ways to fill in my gaps through education. But the number one, what really helped me get there was risk taking. I learned that in order to get where you want to go, you have to be willing to do what others aren't willing to do. And I discovered that I was a builder. I was a person who could join organizations, departments that weren't performing, that were failing, and I could turn it around or I could build them from scratch. And that took me moving out of the country. That took me leaving teams out of the country, but also relocating across the country where you go where the big risks are, not be comfortable. So I have all this growth, and now here I am as a senior leader, but I'm focused on the wrong things. I'm looking at my team, and a part of me, because I have these insecurities, I feel as if I have to please everybody. I need to make sure that they're feeling good about me. They need to like me. They need to care about me. And as I continue to chase that emotion, I wasn't really getting anywhere because I learned that it's not about them being happy. It's more about me making them feel like they are valued as an individual. So I want to focus on what I call value-centric leadership. We all know servant leadership, right? Everyone talks about that. But I believe when you use value-centric leadership, you're really putting their best interests at heart. Whether you have a child who, if you're a parent, you have a child who doesn't want to eat their vegetables, but they have to because they need to get those vitamins and nutrients. They're not happy in the moment, but it's the best thing for them. Or even us as employees, we may love our jobs, but there's some days I wake up and I just don't want to go to work. I want to stay in bed a little bit longer. And that's okay as a leader, that's fine, but we have to make sure that we focus on value-centric leadership. So I'm going to break that down for you and tell you a little bit of a story. So the first thing I look at it in two separate buckets. There's valued and there's valuable. So how do you make your team feel valued? Well, I had this team that I was leading, and I won't name the name of the organization, but it was my very first director role. My leader asked me to move over to a different department that was failing. And he said, this team, I just let go of their leader. They were leading with fear. We haven't hit performance metrics for our client in over 2 years. It's our biggest contract and we may lose them. What can you do to come over? So I came over and immediately started noticing we have to turn the morale around. We had the worst attendance in the company, the worst attrition, but on top of that, it was just out of control and the people didn't feel valued. So what I learned was that feedback was a gift, and not just a little bit of feedback. It was actually sitting down with people. Prior to my arrival, whenever they sat down with their leader, it was usually when they were in trouble. So there was a big fear of, oh, I'm being called in the office. What is the principal have for me now? So I wanted to make sure I created an environment where they were heard. And what I would do was intentionally, when we had our one-on-ones, I never sat on the opposite side of my desk. I always made sure that we were sitting in a place where we were side by side and they felt like I was one of their peers, because I didn't want to create the impression that I was higher than them. It was, how do we have the most vulnerable conversations? But then the challenge that we have as leaders is that in these organizations, your team will only feel so much comfortable talking to you as far as telling you their thoughts and what's going on in the organization. So what I did was I created an anonymous survey, and we all have our surveys that are tied back to your HR employee satisfaction. But I said I want something that's more frequent, because those surveys can be biannually or once a quarter. So I said, let's create a survey that my team can submit a question or feedback every single week. And what's going to happen is every Monday, I will record a video answering that question so that everyone gets the message, and make it as short as possible. And by doing that, what ended up happening was the rumors of, hey, I heard all of our jobs are going to be outsourced, or I heard that this is happening, or we are concerned about this. I was able to address those water cooler conversations before they started to manifest into true and real unfounded lack of, poor morale across the organization. But in addition, they gave me great ideas, letting me know where they were burnt out and things that we could do to make the company more efficient. So allowing them to have a voice, especially those individuals who don't necessarily have that relationship with you, was powerful, but also addressing it on a regular basis on video, unscripted, was very important. So there's another component. It's like, okay, we're having the dialogue. I'm building a bit of that trust. To be honest, one thing we also did was we had an issue in the organization where I traveled for business, and while I was away, there was a lot of disgruntledness happening at the organization. So I flew back in town and I said, let's have a series of town halls, because we started to have progress in this department. But unfortunately, we started to slide back a bit. So we had town halls, and I had my leadership team and I sit in the middle. I told our employees they could sit around us, and we have to answer every question they put out there. I told them, you can curse, you can be as passionate as you want, just let's have an open conversation. And the feedback I got were things like, we want to trust you, Sean, but prior to you joining our department, last year we had pay cuts, and the founder of the company went on a 3-month yacht trip. So in their minds, they were thinking, this individual has taken our money and he went on a trip while our pay was cut. Now that wasn't true, but it was the perception. And just really allowing them to voice their concerns was great. But what we also did was we said, here's how we want to get better together. So we made a commitment, and we took their ideas and we focused on, what do you want us to fix in this department first? And because we had their commitment, from there on, they felt as if they were owners in the change, not being told what to do, but they felt like they had buy-in. And that created a department where within 60 days, we turned everything around. Everything was up and to the right. CSAT was through the roof. Sales were exceeding goals. But more than that, we actually built a team, which was awesome. The next thing I learned was recognition. So I wanted to find a way to compensate and give recognition to our employees, because a lot of times when we all do work, you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you feel as if, okay, how do I get acknowledged for the work that I put in? And initially, I actually launched a recognition and bonus program that highlighted people who performed well. So if you were in our top quartile of performers, or top 10%, you were recognized and you received that compensation boost, and everyone knew who you were. The challenge was that most of the time it was the same people over and over again, right? Because your top performers are going to be your top performers, especially when you're looking at overall balanced performance. So what I decided to do was I said, how do we make sure everyone gets recognized? And not necessarily everyone, but everyone is recognized where they're great. Because if I were to take our KPIs and break them down by category, this person's actually the best at productivity. This person's the best at customer experience. This person's the best at sales. So once we broke it down into smaller categories and subcategories, we were able to recognize more people. And even though I may not be that good at, let's say, productivity, the fact that my customer experience score was so high and I was being recognized for it, it motivated them to get better in the other areas. So I understood that now recognition isn't just about, let me make sure my top of my top get recognized, but it's also about those moments of identifying who's doing something that normally wouldn't show up on our radar. Let's give it back to them. Then also allow their peers to give them that recognition as well. So what ended up happening was we started looking at our performance scorecard, it started to just exceed the goals. If you were in the top quartile 6 months prior, by the end of that 6 months, our top was now our bottom performance. Like that's how good it was. But it was really about recognizing those individuals and pushing them forward, and then also allowing them to recognize leaders that they thought were great. And that motivated my leaders to do a better job. So they knew that the team was looking at them. Now they wanted to step up as well. But the most important part of making someone feel valued at the end of the day is compensation. Compensation and progression. And, you know, I'm a big believer in how do we take care of our people, especially those who perform well. And sometimes when you're in an organization, which I've been in, you get to a place where the budget doesn't allow for me to necessarily give everyone a comp increase. So, or maybe this year we're going to be slowing down on comp increases or merit increases. So what I ended up doing in this department, I said, I want to be able to recognize individuals. You know, Joe has been here 2 years and Sally's been here a year, but Sally's performance is outperforming Joe. I can't say that they're on the same level. So what we started doing was creating leveling. And I've learned that when compensation isn't an option, creating micro levels within that same compensation band can be very empowering. So it was, how do I take, Sally, and say, we recognize what you do based on your KPIs and consistency. We're going to go ahead and level you up to level 2 or level 3. And that started to build even more momentum within the organization, because the team felt as if, you know what, I'm being recognized for the work I do. And even though I'm someone who, I love leadership, I want to make as many leaders as possible, we know that not everybody wants to get into leadership. It's not for everybody. So how do we make sure we're recognizing those individuals who are not in leadership and get them there as well? But we understood that the key component was that compensation piece. So now the team is making money and we're doing great, but the team still was starting to plateau, and I couldn't understand why. And I was like, okay, they feel valued, but they don't feel valuable. Valuable is a very different thing. Valuable is a place of, you believe the company sees you for the asset that you are. Because when you're valued, I'm giving you things, but valuable is more of a frame of mind. So I knew that one thing that worked for me, I was at a company where I grew over a 5-year period. It wasn't until year 3 that I joined our first company, All Hands. And just being able to see that, where we were and where we were going as an organization, I felt more connected to the organization. I felt as if there was a bigger picture. So with my team, I knew, okay, we're in this bubble right now. We're performing well, but they don't see the bigger picture within our company. So I started bringing in, what is our top company key KPIs? What are we looking to achieve? And how are they directly impacting that? And we started rallying behind each other, saying, hey, I want to help you get there too. If the company has this goal, what can we do to do something about it? Then also having representatives. If you have frontline employees who can't always be a part of these meetings, how do you make space for them? How do you carve out time and say, let me allow this individual this session to participate and maybe even be a presenter? Because to represent your team is a big thing, but you have to connect them overall to the organization so that there's not a us versus them mentality. And I remember looking at some of my teams where, if you look at your employee satisfaction scores or survey feedback, they would say, I love my manager, but I don't trust the company. And that is a disconnect. And as a leader, as the manager that's being loved, you have to know, I'm dropping the ball here. And a lot of times we don't think of it that way, but it's usually, how are we communicating the message from the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top? So as a leader, you really want to look at that and say, what can I do to turn that around and connect those dots? And then that's when you know you're doing the right thing. So we started working on that, getting them more connected to the overall organization. And now they're wanting to do things outside of our department, even things like an apprenticeship program. We rolled out apprenticeship where we said, you know what, let's do a rotational. You want to go other places in this organization, whether it's on the engineering team, the sales team, or the marketing team. How do we get exposure with you for you with that? And that program also made them feel more connected. It made them feel as if they had growth and opportunities as well. So the next big one was sponsorship. We started having certain key players in the team that we just felt were really strong at what they did. But then also the department started performing really well. But I learned that as a leader, one of my number one responsibilities is how well do I market my team? At the end of the day, you could have the best product in the world, but if no one sees it being marketed, it doesn't exist. And we have to recognize that our leaders don't always have the time to keep an eye on how you're doing and who's the best in your team. So what we can do is, instead of just being coaches and developers of our team, we should be the champions out there talking about our wins, keeping a scorecard and making it simple enough to go back. So I remember going back to my leadership team and saying, hey, you put me over here for a reason. Look how great we're doing. Because my COO was so busy at the time looking at other things that it was quiet on my side because the client wasn't complaining, but he didn't necessarily know why. So it was just finding ways to tell that story and also even do fun things like let's make a department video and talk about it. Today we have things like TikToks and we have 90-second conversations. How do we portray that message in a way where it gets to the top, but then also recognizing who on your team, who are those individuals that you want to sponsor and say, hey, this person would be great for this opportunity. This would be a great cross-functional promotion and hire. Because the more your team sees you doing that and they see people from their team growing in the other parts of the organization, that's when the fire starts to happen. They know we are valuable to this organization. They see what we bring to the table. And then the last part of being valuable really comes down to it. To be honest, it's the most important out of all of this. It comes down to security. And what do I mean by security? I don't mean compliance. What I mean is that you can pay me well, you can recognize me, you can make me feel connected to this organization, you can even sponsor me. But if I don't feel that I have job security, I don't want to be here. And we can't always control this in macroeconomic times because it is what it is as far as how the market's going to react. But it's so important for us as leaders to start building that job security within our teams. And the way we do that, outside of just pure transparency and letting them know where we're going, I believe is building that strong relationship with finance. Every department that I've ever taken over or had the pleasure of leading, the first thing I do when I walk in that department is I think, how can I prevent my team from having to be cut in half or having to be laid off? And with that mindset, I'm immediately walking in and thinking, how can we optimize, be more efficient, then also champion and market the success that we're having? That way the organization can see that we're valuable and we're going to be protected here. Because I know that once these rumors start happening, even your A players are going to leave the organization. So that security is so important. And you can't perfectly control this. It is not a metric that's always going to be perfect. But how you show up, the efforts you make, the initiatives you have. We know AI is coming. AI is going to disrupt and change a lot of our departments and a lot of our workflows. How do we make sure that we're leaning into it and not running away from it so that our team now becomes a part of that next generation of its industry? So I just think it's very important because you want people to be able to sleep well at night and do our best and be open and honest about when we're not heading in the right direction and say, here's what we can do better. Here's how we can become more valuable to the organization. So really, those are the 6 key principles. But I know I said that you don't owe happiness, but I do believe that we as individuals, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an employee or employer, we do owe ourselves career happiness. And the way I break down career happiness is essentially it's an easy formula. Career happiness is your purpose multiplied by progress. Now, what does that mean? Purpose is probably the hardest thing that any of us can identify. What do we actually love to do? What are we here for? If you were an athlete and you grew up playing basketball and you thought you were going to go to the NBA and it didn't work out, it's okay because that was never your purpose. What your purpose was the key ingredients of what you loved about it, the attributes. You love being a part of a team. You love pushing yourself. You love having a new challenge. And that is something that can be a part of any organization, but it's about finding the right roles that line up with your purpose and what you love to do. I didn't say passion, because your passion and purpose are two different things, but your passion is what you love to do for yourself, but your purpose is what you love to do for others. So how do you lean into that? But the reason why I say it's multiplied by progress is because even if you're working in your purpose, if you're not getting that career growth and that progression, you will start to feel as if, you know what, I don't know if I want to be here. I feel like I'm stagnant, I'm not growing. So you have to mix that progression with it. And on the inverse, I can grow you and compensate you well, but if you're not working in your purpose, you wake up one day saying, what am I doing here? I'm not sure if any of you know any, but I know several lawyers that have just quit being lawyers. They say, you know what, I took this path in my life. I went to school, I became a lawyer, but this isn't really my purpose. And now I'm doing something else. So it doesn't matter who you are. The money won't always keep you there if you're not working within your purpose. So we as leaders, even though we don't owe them happiness, what we can do is help curate that, help your teams identify what is their purpose, and then help ensure that you're putting them in position for growth. But in summary, when it comes to value-centric leadership, the way I like to view it is in a very simple way. The reason why you shouldn't focus on happiness is the same reason why a great CEO doesn't focus on stock price. When a great CEO has a publicly traded company and the stock is going down, everyone's writing articles, the press wants answers, people are selling. If you as a CEO are so focused on that, you're focused on the wrong metric, because now you're trying to chase the market when in reality, you can't control the market. But what you can control are the key principles that help your business perform well. So you want to hone in and say, oh, I'm not going to focus on the output, which is the stock price, aka the happiness. I'm going to focus on doing the right things for the business. And what will happen is over time, you'll notice that the more you stay consistent and build momentum, then you will perform well. And then no matter what, you're going to see your stock price, aka your happiness, go up regardless. So it really just comes down to focusing on doing what's right. I'll leave you with a great quote. I'm a big fan of building momentum. And one of my favorite leaders is a gentleman named John C. Maxwell. And he has a great quote where he says, you could take a train going 50 miles an hour, and it can smash through a 5-foot steel reinforced wall and not stop. That same exact train, if it's standing still and you put a 1-inch block at the wheel, it can't move. And it's because it's all about building momentum. So when you're chasing happiness, you're constantly stopping your momentum because you're not doing what's right. You're going after trying to please the moment instead of trying to make sure you set up a recipe for future and consistent success. So I hope that I was able to help you a little bit today, and you understand that as leaders, you don't owe happiness, but at the same time, you are valued and you are valuable. What you bring to the table helping your teams is key and critical. It does not work without you. Even Michael Jordan knows that he needed a coach. The best in the world still needs a coach to train, develop them, and give them feedback. And it may not always make them happy. You may tell them you have a poor layup, you need to fix that. But ultimately, you as leaders have one of the hardest jobs in the world. You don't owe them happiness, but know that you are valuable. Thank you.
Awesome. We certainly appreciate that, Sean, and thank you for being here today. Are there any questions from the chat or any feedback from the chat? So I don't see any questions in the chat, but again, Sean, I think you did a great job. Certainly want to thank you for coming and sharing with our partner community about leadership. Every one of these speaker series is an opportunity for us to grow and learn. So certainly very valuable, and we appreciate that. So thank you for doing that. We do want to highlight a few upcoming trainings and events that we have as a DE&I program. So on June 3rd, we have a Get Control call, and June 25th and July 1st. So those 3 dates, we will have Get Control trainings and calls that are specifically for the partners in this program. And then we also have our next speaker series that will be coming up at some point at the end of the summer. So stay tuned for the next speaker announcement that will be coming soon. So we want to thank everyone for joining today. We hope that Sean really gave you something to take away. I know I learned a few things, a couple things that I took away. I think maybe is there a question in the chat? Okay. One of the things listening to Sean was storytelling, right? Being able to tell your story, particularly as you go along through your career, right? Even if you stay at the same company, I've been at Comcast 19 years, but I still believe in the power of being able to tell my story from one role within the company to the next role, right? How does what I did before translate to the next position that I'm going to take, and being able to tell a fluid story throughout your career? That's really important and something that I took, I just kind of reiterated the kind of way I think about it. So I really appreciated that. Another takeaway was listening to a self-improvement book every morning. I think that's a great way to just kind of reinforce some of the things that you probably think about, but just hearing it, on a consistent basis gets your day started, and you start off the day, on a positive note more times than a negative note if you're doing that. So I would also encourage everyone to do that. And recognizing people as a leader, recognizing people that you work with where they're great at, right? So on a leaderboard, they may not show up on the metrics that the company's grading on per se, but everyone has something great and a great ability that they bring to the table, and finding a way to recognize that. And I think it was very powerful when Sean said, instead of sitting across from someone that I work with, I'm going to take the position to sit beside them, right? So that this is a group effort. This is a team effort. I'm here to help you grow. And we're on the same side. Our missions are both in alignment with each other, even though we have different roles within the company. So those were my three takeaways. I'm sure there were others. And if you have some, please feel free to provide that feedback. This was recorded, and it will be on our DE&I YouTube page. So feel free to go there and watch it again, or if you join late and you want to catch back up, you certainly can do that. If you have any questions regarding our DE&I initiative, please reach out to your DE&I ambassador or your indirect sales teams. Again, this was recorded, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. And we appreciate everyone that took time. I know we are on right at 40 minutes now to join and learn something today. We hope that this is helping you grow. That is the purpose of this initiative, just to give you as many tools and opportunities to tap in and grow and learn from each other. So I think Sean did an amazing job, and I want to thank all of you for joining. So with that, I'll say thank you and appreciate everybody's time today.
James, Brandy, we actually have a question that just popped
Oh,
up
we
in the
do?
chat.
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah, it actually is
sorry.
coming from Coley. So the question in the chat is, Sean, how do you tackle fear of failure as it relates to making a team member feel valued?
I'm a big fan of failure. And I know we hear that a lot lately, but the only way we can get better is when we're failing. The only time that failure actually feels bad is when we don't have a safe space. So the key is, am I in an environment where I have the opportunity to miss as many shots in order to learn how to make the right shots? So to me, it's okay. And I tell my team all the time, go ahead, get it wrong, and now you figure out where your guardrails are. But to me, it's all about just creating a safe space and an environment. As we call it, psychological safety is key. If you have that space, then you'll be all right. Thank
Great
you.
question, Coley.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? Going once, going twice. So hearing none, again, Sean, we want to thank you for taking time out to speak today. I think it was very impactful. Again, I know I had some good takeaways. I feel like there were some for everyone to take away and grow from. So we certainly encourage you to do that, and thank you all for being a part of this. So again, thank you all, and hope you have a great day.
See you next event. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.